Tonight on 3 News, an ANZAC Day tragedy. 3 Air Force crew are killed in a helicopter crash. The shock is felt as far away as Gallipoli.
Our thoughts and our heartfelt condolences go out to the families of the lost.
A 4th airman who survived the crash is in critical condition, but he's been visited in hospital by a top Air Force official.
And the Storm line up for another battle against the Warriors tonight, amid reports some players don't want to take the field.
This is 3 News with Carolyn Robertson and Simon Shepherd.
Kia ora, good evening. 3 New Zealand Air Force crew have been killed in a pre-dawn helicopter crash in hills north of Wellington. A 4th crewman is in a critical condition in hospital. The Iroquois helicopter was one of 3 travelling from Ohakea to the dawn ANZAC service in Wellington. Emma JOLLIFF is live at Pukerua Bay near the crash site. Emma?
Carolyn, it's here that emergency services in charge of the recovery effort have been based all day. They say they're shocked at this tragic accident, made all the more poignant because it's ANZAC Day, a day when we remember those who've served and died for their country. The wreckage of the helicopter still lies in a small gully on a steep and misty hillside overlooking Pukerua Bay. It was one of 3 Iroquois flying in the pre-dawn gloom from their base at Ohakea to Wellington for a fly-past to pay tribute at the capital's dawn ANZAC ceremony. It crashed about 5:45 a.m.
I presume that the crew were killed instantly. Unfortunately, as I say, one of the crew members managed to get out of the wreck and was located nearby, and he's in hospital at the moment.
The Air Force this afternoon named the dead. They were 28-year-old Flying Officer Dan Gregory, 33-year-old Flight Lieutenant Hayden Madsen, and Corporal Ben Carson, who was 25 years old.
Today we remember those who lost their lives doing their duty at Gallipoli 95 years ago. And now we must add the names of 3 more who have lost their lives in the service of their country. They were all too young and all with bright futures to look forward to. And now we mourn their loss as we support their loved ones, their friends and their colleagues.
The Westpac rescue helicopter and another Iroquois spent the morning circling the unforgiving terrain, winching crew down to the wreckage. But soon the fog rolled in and it was too thick for them to fly.
Initially when we arrived, we couldn't really see anything because the cloud was a little bit low on the hilltops and was just below the actual scene of the crash.
The Air Force say they're flying in next of kin from around the country. Directly across the valley here is the crash site. As you can see, there are strong winds and low cloud. Authorities say there were similarly misty conditions when the helicopter went down before dawn.
The weather was poor, but we fly in poor weather all of the time.
Residents were woken by the noise of the Iroquois.
2 helicopters went over very low, right over the house, and then a moment or 2 later, my wife heard a bang and wondered what it was, of course.
It's only the 2nd fatal accident involving Air Force Iroquois helicopters. 38 years ago, 3 crew died when one crashed into sandhills at Kaipara. The Air Force says it's too early to speculate on the cause of today's crash. The 3 Iroquois were flying under normal air traffic control coverage. The other 2 helicopters changed course and landed at Wellington and Paraparaumu airports after the crash. The surviving crewman tonight remains in a critical condition at Wellington Hospital. Police have confirmed that all 3 bodies have now been removed from the site, but it did take longer than expected because those poor conditions meant they couldn't be winched out by helicopter. The crash scene has now officially been handed over to the Air Force. Carolyn.
Emma, thank you. From the National War Memorial to the Pukerua Bay Town Hall, ANZAC services all around the country made special mention of those who died in the crash. But at times, no one was quite sure exactly how many had died, not even the Governor-General. Dan Parker reports.
While Defence Force personnel were mourning the dead at ANZAC celebrations all over the country, Vice Chief Jack Steer was at the Wellington Hospital visiting the sole survivor from the Iroquois crash.
He's in the intensive care unit, he's doing okay and he's definitely alive.
Steer had earlier been at a service at the National War Memorial, where confusion about how many lives the crash had actually claimed was evident at the highest level.
I am sadly advised in the course of our service this morning that the number of deaths are now 4.
That mistake, based on incorrect information which had also been passed on to the Defence Minister, was soon corrected though. But the ceremony, which was to remember the fallen from battles long past, was clearly affected by the armed forces' most recent casualties.
For this loss is felt by all who are part of the Defence Force family. How poignantly, O Lord, are we reminded of the cost of service, wherever that may be.
For a tragedy like this to happen on ANZAC morning is just absolutely devastating.
The Air Force's loss was perhaps most movingly captured by its own band, which performed Edward Elgar's rendition of For the Fallen. Closer to the crash site at the ANZAC service in Pukerua Bay, the tributes continued. Many residents of the small town awoke to news of the tragedy, while those at the local ANZAC service were also in shock.
And it really brings it home to you, what the servicemen do. And it's a risky business flying anyway, or it can be. I'm an ex-pilot myself, and I feel for the services.
And that was a sentiment shared by many, including those in the armed forces, who have a new tragic memory for a day set aside for remembrance. Dan Parker, 3 News.
Prime Minister John Key broke the news of the deaths to thousands of people as they gathered at ANZAC Cove in Turkey to commemorate ANZAC Day. Kim Chisnell was there and joins us now live. Kim.
Simon, New Zealand's Defence Force has less than 1,000 members, and as such it's often considered to be one big family. Well, members of that family here at ANZAC Cove today were visibly upset when they learnt the news of the loss of 3 good mates. It's a time to honour the dead from years past, but this ANZAC Day at Gallipoli they had a new tragedy to acknowledge.
Our thoughts and our heartfelt condolences go out to the families of the lost, along with the servicemen and women of the Royal New Zealand Air Force as they mourn the tragic loss of 3 good mates.
132 Defence Force members are in Turkey to commemorate ANZAC Day. Their Chief of Defence said the helicopter accident will affect every one of them.
We're a small Defence Force and we know these people. The Prime Minister knows them, I know them. We fly with them all of the time. They're part of our family.
Around 5,000 people wrapped up warm and braved a long, sleepless night to see dawn break at ANZAC Cove. A university study has found while Australians come here to Gallipoli to celebrate their national identity and wave flags, for New Zealanders it's a much more solemn affair. That must be especially true of today's service.
It was quite a sombering news to hear, really.
Quite sad to hear it, obviously, on the day.
The Prime Minister will cut short his trip to Europe and the Middle East and return home as soon as possible.
It's a great tragedy that would occur on such a poignant moment when they were going down to pay their respects and be part of the commemorations for ANZAC Day.
In an unfortunate mix-up, the Turks lowered the Australian flag to half-mast, but the sentiment surrounding today's deaths was unmistakable. Simon, right now members of the Air Force are on their way to the service at Chunuk Bair. The Chief of the Defence Force told us that Chunuk Bair is really the special place for New Zealanders here on the peninsula, and as such he expects that it will be there that the Air Force members will have a chance to reflect fully on the loss of their friends. I expect it will be a very emotional service when it starts in just over 2.5 hours' time.
Kim, thank you.